Hey all, it's Starzy, and today I guess I'm going to be doing my first book haul. This is going to be all the books I acquired in 2019. Now, I'm not actually someone who buys books very often. Majority of the reading I did last year, which was over 50 books, was from the library. So it's not a huge stack I have here, but I think it's also going to be an interesting test of how many I've actually read that I acquired. They are mostly newer things. I know. We're going to be going through the books, tell you a bit about them, whether I read them and liked them I guess will also be coming up, and that's what we're going to do. My 2019 book haul. So first up I actually have a book that I got from a book subscription service, and that is Stormcrow by Kaylin Josephson, which I got in a YA Chronicles box, which is an Australian subscription box, and this book is a YA fantasy, and it is about a girl, I don't remember her name, but she lives in this kingdom where these magical crows kind of run everything from, you know, tending the earth crows, to you've got storm crows up in the sky and all of this kind of stuff. And then one day the crows are actually attacked and they're all destroyed, and you're then kind of facing this new situation that's been brought about where she's actually being married off to the prince of another kingdom to try and kind of keep peace between them now that they don't have their crows and their main source of power. And you're also looking at this main character who is going through some really dark depression basically because she loved these crows. I read this and I thought it was okay. I believe it's a debut fantasy, YA fantasy, so it's definitely not bad. I'm in a situation where most YA fantasy kind of just doesn't excite me, I think, but that's that one. Then I have an entire trilogy that I read last year after I loved the first one. So I have Nevernight, Dark Dawn, which is actually the last one, it's not in the right order, and God's Grave by J. Kristoff, which of course is the Nevernight trilogy. And this is a situation where I have actually read all three of them, and I actually went out and actually originally read Nevernight from the library, and I loved it so much that I immediately went out and bought Nevernight and God's Grave. This is one of my favorite things I read last year. If you've somehow missed what it's about, you're basically following Mia Colbert, who is, she wants revenge for the death of her family essentially, and she's training to be an assassin. And in this first book she's in an assassin school and there's a bit of a mystery going on because some people are dying and all of those kind of things. Really good time, really love these books, especially the first one. Yes, hello, it's Starzy from the future. I didn't actually mention how I came about majority of these. Most of them I did just purchase myself. Obviously one came in a subscription box, but I also need to give a shout out for Dark Dawn because this was a book that was released for the first time last year, and I was really upset that I wasn't going to get to read it immediately because there aren't any bookstores near where I was living. Bookstores that there were generally were closed by the time I finished work on a weekday, so I was really upset that I wasn't going to be able to read this until like a week after it released, but my lovely boyfriend went and bought it for me, so shout out to my boo for going and getting Dark Dawn so that I could read it when it released. The next book is actually the one that I'm currently reading, and that is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. So this is another book that's following a girl training to be an assassin essentially, following Nona. Is her name Nona? Yes, I should really know that for sure considering I'm reading it at the moment. But you're following Nona in this book, and she is whisked away by some nuns and she's now training with them. Yeah, I saw a lot of people recommending this book as one that people who liked Nevernight should read because it does have those similar elements of the assassins and the training, and you're following a young girl as she's kind of going through things. So yes. Then I have a book I purchased last year which I actually already owned, but I have my reasons, and that's It by Stephen King. I have read this. It's actually the first book that I ever tabbed, and the reason I bought a second copy is because The copy I had was a huge hardback that was my dad's, and like this is large enough as it is, let alone the hardback, and I was not emotionally prepared to read that, so I got this because it was cheap and it's my favourite type of fluffy book. Basically, if you've not seen any of the movies, because those have been really big recently, you are in this town of Derry and you are following two timelines. So you're following this group of people, one when they're kids, and then you've also got the timeline running through when they've come back to the town as adults. And what is my cat doing? Okay. And there's lots of bad things going down. There's obviously the creepy clown, Pennywise, is in the town and children are going missing. But you've also got a lot of things in this book that are scary in a more human way, of kind of the things that humans will do and the abuse that happens between people and things like that. And this is a haul, not a wrap up, but I had some very mixed feelings about this book. There is some very uncomfy stuff in it and it's very long, but I have read it. Next up, I have some graphic novels. I have Monstrous Volumes 2 and 3 because I already had Monstrous Volume 1, but I read it for the first time last year and I loved it. It was also one of my favourite things I read last year. And yet I haven't gotten to these yet, and I don't really know why, considering how much I loved the first one. But essentially in these graphic novels, we are in this kind of dark steampunk fantasy world. And I was not expecting how kind of dark and gritty they actually are, because you've got this world where there's kind of these different races and there's a lot of kind of conflicts and stuff amongst them. And you've also got things going on like people cutting off and eating the arms of living people, essentially. There's some very interesting stuff going on, but you're essentially following this girl who has something dark within her, and she doesn't really know what it is, and you don't really know what it is, and you're kind of following her going through this world. But I did really love the first one and I need to get to these. Alright, a book that was really popular at one point that I have not actually read yet, and that is 9000 by Leigh Bardugo. What do I know about this book? Dark academia. You're following a girl who I think can see or speak to ghosts, and she's in like a Yale type setting or something, and there's a secret society. I don't know a lot about this, I just know everyone was speaking about it, and apparently this is an exclusive signed edition with bonus content. But yes, another thing I need to read. I'm down to my last 3 books, and I'm going to end off with a book I definitely read because it was my favourite book I read last year. But before we get there, I have Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. I have not read this yet, but it is beautiful. Like, look at that dragon, it's so beautiful. This is essentially a history of the Targaryens, so from his A Song of Ice and Fire series, from Game of Thrones. I think it's going back and looking at the Targaryen family and their history, so it's set out a bit more like a history book than a traditional novel, I believe. Yes, it's beautiful, but I have not read it. But I've actually only read the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire, but I have seen the entire TV show, and I have always been interested in the Targaryens and dragons. So, last 2 books from the same series. I've read one of them, haven't read the second one yet, but the first one was my absolute favourite thing I read last year. And that's Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. I actually listened to an interview with him recently where he clarified how to pronounce it, and I still don't remember. I'm sorry. But I haven't read Bloody Rose yet, which is the second one. But in this first one, Kings of the Wild, we are following this band of old men. So it actually really surprised me that I liked this book as much as I did, because who knew I could care so much about a group of old men? I certainly didn't. But we're following this band of old guys because in this world, essentially, you have bands that are treated much like kind of rock bands in our society are, but these bands are actually mercenary bands, right? They're made up of fighters and things like that. So that's a really interesting concept. And plot-wise, what's actually happening in this story is you had this band who were really popular back in their day, but they're all old now, they've gone about their lives, started families, all of that kind of stuff. But one of their daughters is in danger, so he is trying to get the band back together so that they can go save her, right? And this book is it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, but it also made me feel things, so it's had a really nice balance there. You've got this interesting concept of the bands, you've got this interesting cast of characters. It also very much feels like an off-the-rails D&D campaign, because you've got this interesting mix of characters and classes, and they're going on this kind of fairly traditional type of adventure, seeing lots of different creatures and all of that. And there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of references, and it's just a really good time. Yes, this was my favorite thing that I read last year, and that, I believe, is then all the books that I acquired. You can see that that's the amount of books that I acquired over the entirety of a year, the entirety of 2019, and yeah, that's probably smaller than some people haul in a month. But I'm a big supporter of libraries. I also don't really like buying books if I don't know that I'm gonna like them, so that's where I stand. But yes, Kings of the Wild, if you're gonna take away anything from this, go read this, because it's underrated. It's not, although people who are big adult fantasy readers, definitely I've seen a lot of them talking about this, but in general in the book community, this doesn't get as much love as I think it needs. So that's the takeaway. Stay safe, stay sane, Stasi out.